I want to start tonight by reminding you of the timeline we established on this channel just a short while ago, when Andy Burnham rode the temporary wave of the Makerfield by-election straight to the leadership. I made a specific, unambiguous prediction on this stage. I told you he would not survive his first year, that he might not even make it to Christmas, because the internal contradictions of his platform would force a crisis far faster than the Westminster commentariat was prepared for. Tonight, we don't need to guess anymore. The timeline has just been drastically accelerated. Andy Burnham has just made the single biggest mistake of his political career, and in doing so, he has manually sprung the exact trap I warned you was waiting for him. He has not even settled into the desk at Downing Street, and already the desperate desire to be liked by everyone has forced him into a decision that ensures he will please absolutely no one. If you want a raw, forensic breakdown of how a premiership unravels in real time before it has even properly begun, subscribe to this channel right now. Because what has just happened in Westminster is not a minor tactical misstep or a temporary media storm. It is the structural cracking of a foundation that was already built on an illusion. Let's talk about the mistake verbatim. Burnham has officially attempted to resolve the central, bleeding contradiction of his economic platform. Faced with intense, mounting pressure from the markets on one side and his own radical backbenchers on the other, he has attempted to split the difference. He has stood before the cameras and announced that he will aggressively press forward with his multi-billion-pound social housing and national social care expansion, the very promises that won him his party's crown, while simultaneously reaffirming his absolute loyalty to the rigid fiscal rules inherited from Rachel Reeves' catastrophic previous budgets. He genuinely expects the British public to believe that he can spend tens of billions of pounds that do not exist, without raising taxes on an already suffocating economy, and without borrowing an extra penny from the international markets. It is an act of pure, unadulterated political cowardice disguised as a grand compromise, and it is the exact moment the Burnham myth dies contact with basic arithmetic. The anatomy of a trap. Think about the sheer desperation required to make an announcement like this. Burnham looked at his collapsing approval ratings, numbers that shifted into negative territory faster than any incoming leader in modern British history, and he panicked. He realized that the public's patience had already been entirely spent by the cumulative failures of the last 7 prime ministers, and he knew he had zero line of credit left to draw upon. So instead of choosing a side, instead of showing the steel and substantive policy preparation required to actually govern a nation in crisis, he chose to perform. He reached back into his old toolkit from his days in Greater Manchester. He gave a warm, emotionally resonant speech about feeling, about decency, and about how, where there is a will, there is a way. But the international markets do not trade in feeling. They trade in numbers, and the numbers backing Burnham's announcement simply do not add up. I want to stop right here and ask you a direct question, because your common sense is worth infinitely more than the collective wisdom of the Labour front bench. When you watched Burnham stand at that podium and declare that he could magically unlock a transformative multi-billion-pound spending programme without changing a single line of the country's strict fiscal constraints, what was your immediate reaction? Drop it in the comments below. Did you look at him and see a man completely out of his depth, desperately trying to paper over an empty ledger? Did you see a career politician who thinks a regional accent can make a mathematical lie sound authentic? Or did you realize with absolute certainty that we are watching a rerun of the exact same economic self-destruction that took down Liz Truss? Tell me down below, because the speed with which you are recognizing this hollow performance is precisely why his premiership is already structurally finished. The parliamentary blood in the water. Let's look at how this mistake is currently being received inside the Parliamentary Labour Party, because this is where the execution of his leadership will actually be carried out. As I told you before, the backbenchers in that building are not loyalists holding a line out of tribal tradition. They are survivors of a brutal culture of regicide who watched Keir Starmer get systematically dismantled the moment his weakness became an electoral liability. They have learned that moving against a failing leader early carries zero penalty and immense reward. The moment Burnham walked away from that podium, he didn't reassure his party, he put blood in the water. The serious, economically literate faction of the Parliamentary Labour Party, the ones who understand that the British economy is currently carrying a toxic legacy of £340 billion in tax increases and £260 billion in borrowing from the last two budgets, are in an absolute state of horror. They know exactly what happens when a government tries to bluff the bond markets with uncosted spending commitments. They remember the panic, they remember the soaring mortgage rates, and they know that their own backbench seats will be the very first things incinerated if the economy takes another hit. On the other side, the radical left wing of his party is already furious because they can see the hedge. They know that by trying to keep the legacy fiscal rules, Burnham is inevitably going to have to scale back, delay, or outright abandon the very housing and social care reforms they demanded as the price of their support. By trying to walk down the middle of the road, Burnham has ensured that both sides of his own party are now actively sharpening their knives. He has no tribal base inside Westminster to protect him when the first real crisis hits. He has no personal capital, no decades-old network of political debts to call in, and now he has no reputation for economic clarity. Internal channels close to the Whip's office are already reporting that backbenchers are openly discussing distance rather than loyalty. They are doing the cold political math, and they are realizing that anchoring their survival to a man with negative approval ratings who restarts an economic war with reality is a losing strategy. The gift to Reform UK. If the internal party rebellion is the slow poison, Nigel Farage and Reform UK are the immediate, blunt force trauma waiting for him on the outside. This catastrophic economic announcement is the greatest political gift Burnham could have ever handed to his true opponents. Reform UK is not sitting on the sidelines of British politics anymore, waiting for a normal 5-year electoral cycle to play out. They are leading the national data streams, they are capturing working-class strongholds, and their entire operational strategy is built on pointing out one simple truth, that the mainstream political establishment treats the electorate like fools. Think about how effortlessly Reform can now weaponize this moment. They don't need to craft a complex, 100-page alternative economic manifesto. They simply have to hold up Burnham's own words against the reality of the British state. While Burnham is performing on television about his uncosted social care plans, the asylum hotel bill is continuing to climb by millions of pounds every single week. The small boats are continuing to land on the southern coast without a single shred of a concrete containment plan from Downing Street. The average British worker is looking at their payslip, seeing the historic weight of legacy taxation, and then looking at a Prime Minister who claims he can launch massive new state programmes without any visible source of funding. Reform UK will stand up and say the exact thing that every voter is thinking at their kitchen table. Here is another career politician telling you he can give you everything for free, while refusing to do the one thing you actually asked for, which is to secure the borders and stop spending your hard-earned money on systemic failure. Burnham has handed Farage the ultimate validation of the populist argument. He has proven that his candidacy was never a genuine departure from Starmer's failure. It was merely a cosmetic change of face, designed to keep the same bankrupt liberal establishment instincts in power with diminishing public consent. The collapse compressed. This is why the Christmas timeline is no longer a bold prediction. It is a mathematical probability. A leader cannot survive in the modern political ecosystem without a shield. You either need massive, unshakable public adoration to terrify your backbenchers into submission, or you need absolute clarity of purpose and a unified party behind you to ride out the external storms. Burnham now has neither. His public goodwill evaporated before he could even give his first address from Downing Street, and his internal party unity has just been completely shattered by his own hand. The international markets are watching this performance with deep, quiet skepticism. The moment the next official economic data drop occurs, the moment the OBR or the bond markets look at the reality of his uncosted spending commitments versus the inherited deficit, the squeeze will begin. And when the markets demand a correction, Burnham will not have 2 years to figure out a response the way Starmer did. The timeline is compressed because the patience of the country is entirely exhausted. Every single misstep he makes from this moment onward will not be excused as the natural teething problems of a new government finding its feet. It will be interpreted by a cynical public as definitive proof that he is entirely out of his depth. The narrative has locked in around him before he has even formally taken office. He is the man who promised change but delivered nothing but an arithmetic contradiction. The final reckoning. What this career-ending mistake really exposes is the fundamental flaw of the entire British political class. We have spent 20 years selecting leaders based entirely on their performance metrics rather than their governing capability. We elevate people because they look reasonable on a television screen, because they can project warmth, or because they can win a single, highly unusual by-election under freak political conditions that will never happen again. We have built a system that actively punishes leaders who speak the truth about structural reform and instead rewards men like Andy Burnham, men who have spent decades in public life holding high office without leaving a single trace of substance behind them, relying entirely on public relations to carry them to the top. The tragedy for Burnham is that he has arrived at the summit at the exact moment the public relations machine has stopped working. The British public has been burned 7 times in 10 years, and they have finally run out of patience for promises that do not translate into reality. They see the trap, they see the empty promises, and they see the career-ending nature of his economic bluffs, far faster than Westminster ever anticipated. The conversations happening right now, behind closed doors in the corridors of power, are not about how to help Burnham succeed. They are about how to survive his impending collapse. Backbenchers are already calculating the distance required to keep their own political careers alive when the Burnham project hits the wall before winter. The mistake has been made. The mechanism is in motion, and the countdown clock to the end of his career is moving faster tonight than it ever has before. Make sure you subscribe to this channel and share this video immediately. Britain deserves an honest, unvarnished account of where this trajectory is heading, made right now while the warning signs are glaringly visible, rather than months from now when the collapse is complete and everyone pretends they saw it coming all along. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.